Welcome to another episode of the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast, your source for actionable real-life examples and advice to help you move to the next level of investing. Each week, we help you make a quantum leap in your business, your finances, and/or your life. We want to help you take back control, help you thrive during chaos, and lead you through the current crisis to a better tomorrow. For more resources, check out smartrealestatecoach.com and be sure to give us a rating and review on your favorite platform.
Good morning, Wicked Smart listeners. Welcome to this week's Wicked Smart Masters class. It's Chris Free, your host again. Yes, you got to deal with me again. Guys, now that we're well over 500 episodes, I love when I'm on other people's shows. I love kind of, if I'm into that conversation and there's someone who's got a crap load of experience and or something that I know can bring fun content, productive, profitable things to you guys, the Wicked Smart listeners. That's how I find a lot of the great guests. This guest is no exception. I was on his podcast. Man, I got my note in front of me. I think it just aired. I'll have him talk about that and give you the show name so you can subscribe to it. Mr. Joe Jensen, I'm going to say a thrill seeker, turned real estate mogul from Utah, Nevada. He enjoys outdoors, physical challenges, and playing hard. That's why I said that. And I actually just read I'm in a book right now that I'm certain he's heard of, so I'm going to bring it up to him. You'll hear that in a second. After conquering a decade in sales, he skyrocketed from 5 to 34 units in just under 2 years. So a lot of you that are either, I don't know, learning still in real estate, seeking to learn, not sure which niche to go in. I love bringing people like this because to do that in under 2 years is pretty cool. And no signs of slowing down. He's mastering long-term cash flow now nationwide, and he's armed with the world's best asset analyzer. So I want to dig into that a little bit with him so you can glean some nuggets from that. Joe, with that as a backdrop, welcome to the show, buddy.
Hey, good to be here. Good to see you again, Chris.
Yeah, you too. I wanted you to, because I'll forget, mention your podcast so they can write that down. I didn't give that just a second ago in the intro. So how can they find it?
Yeah, you're good. So, I mean, it's on everywhere podcast can be found. The Real Estate Investing School podcast is the main podcast I host. I also have my own private little one called the Not So Average Joe podcast that sometimes I post on, sometimes I don't. It's just for fun. So
good deal. Those are runner downers, guys. Joe, I want to dive into a bunch of stuff. I want to go back sort of the beginning, then wherever this takes us. You and I are both sort of organic in our style. Go back to sort of early years, right? Just so these guys get to know you. I think it was Nevada, Utah area. Mm-hmm. And then some stuff that went on then and also what that shaped mentally. Because I think this mental game is bigger than most people realize.
Yeah, I grew up on a ranch out in the country, right on the Utah-Nevada border, out by the Great Basin National Park. Just literally, there was just like me and a neighbor, on a ranch, and 20 minutes away, there was a little town of 200 or 300. Another 20 minutes, you can find another couple hundred people. Wow. So real rural, and I didn't slave like some of the farmers out there, but man, we sure learned to work hard. And I think it paid off, just knowing how to do boring stuff and do mundane stuff. And you reap what you sow, and there's time frames and consequences. And if you don't feed the cows, they starve. And it's just like, life's very real when you're on a farm,
Yeah. And so what were you, as a kid, I don't know what age that was, but what were you doing back then, and what kind of take us back there a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so I lived.
Bring you back to sales after that. I want us to see.
Yeah, no, you're good. I lived there from like about 3 to 17, and just kind of hung out with my brothers and sisters. There's a small private school out there of about 30 kids, and so I went to school. I was homeschooled until I was 13, and then from 13 to 17, I went to the high school there. For a couple of years. And yeah, just kind of lived that. It was a very simple life, very simple life.
So how'd you transition? How and why, I think, in what stage you transition into, I think your first major move was sales, correct?
Yeah, so my family ended up moving to Provo, Utah, and I got into some phone sales because it was like a job you could get without any, training or anything. And I thought that was kind of cool. I did roofing for a little bit. I was a waiter for a minute. I was a lifeguard one summer in California. And so I'd done a couple things. But then I went on a 2-year mission for my church, and I knocked doors every day and talking and trying to sell Jesus to people. And that taught me a lot about sales. I came back and said, I'm never doing that again. I hated knocking doors. And then a few years later, though, in my community up there in Utah, everybody, the guys are making crazy money doing it. And so I got pulled back in when a friend of mine was like, dude, I made like, I don't know, I think he said 50 or 80 grand in a summer. And I was like, that was astronomical to me at the time. I had got married at the time. I had $20,000 in student loans that she brought into the marriage. I had no debt, but I inherited it through her. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I went out and started doing door-to-door sales, selling home security systems. And I ended up doing that for 10 years. And that was kind of got me into sales.
Well, door to door and toe to toe is by far the best training, as you learn with your first endeavor, right?
Yeah, I mean it'll put thick skin on you or you'll die.
All right, so then same question, I guess. You went from that, how and why and when, from sales to real estate. Like what the heck sparked that?
So my dad always did some with real estate. Always had a couple rental properties and had some notes that he was the holder on. And he like kind of dabbled in it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And my dad basically didn't really have a job. That's basically what he did. And I didn't really understand it. He had a little recording company for a while too, though. And I don't know. I didn't really understand, but I knew real estate was important. And so even before I started doing sales, I got my first townhome and I did like an FHA primary loan, and then I ended up renting that out eventually. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. And I didn't really have any money, but it was 2009 and you could basically get away with murder back then. You didn't need a job, signature loans practically. So I was able to get that loan, even though I didn't really have good money, but it got me going. I bought a couple houses as I was doing my sales career, just knowing I should get into real estate, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Just bought a couple of rental properties along the way, like 3 or 4. And then I didn't buy anything for like 7 years. That was at the very beginning. I just got focused on my sales career. But then I ended up getting divorced and I have 2 kids. They're 6 and 8 now. They were 2 and 4 at the time. And I was like, wait, I can't be out running big sales teams and being gone all the time. And like, how am I going to raise these kids on my own half the time and still work? And then I looked at all these different jobs and remote work. And I was like, dude, real estate. I remember like that was the ultimate goal, right? Like, let's do it. And I gave myself a year. I said, okay, if I can't figure this out in a year to replace all my income with real estate, then I'm going to go back to the doors. And I really didn't want to go back to the doors. I hated the lifestyle. I didn't enjoy sales. It was just a means to an end. Some guys love it. It wasn't my style. But it paid well and it gave me a lot of options. And so I gave myself a year and I learned how leverage worked. I learned how debt worked. I created my own safe debt guidelines because I grew up on a ranch and I don't know, like debt's the devil. Like country people, like, if you can't buy it cash, you can't buy it, right? Like you don't get into debt. Like that is the worst possible thing you could possibly do under any scenario. Like that was drilled into my brain, which was cool because, again, I didn't have any debt. I didn't have credit card debt. I didn't have school debt. I didn't have zero debt of any type. But I've realized once I learned how to leverage that safely, it's a hugely powerful tool in the real estate world and just in how the economy actually runs on debt. And once you understand the debt game and how you can avoid taxes with debt, you don't pay taxes on a loan. There's just so many benefits of debt that I kind of had to break the mold of my father. And, he bought properties. Like I said, he did a little bit, but, it took him 30 years to pay them off, to pay for them, not to pay them off. He would save up for 10 or 20 years, buy a house, like just small little ways. It took him a long time. It took him 50 years to build a tiny, tiny portfolio. I was like, I got to do 10 times what he did in 1 year. And I figured out how debt worked. And that was huge. It was a game changer. It was a paradigm shift. It was hard for me to kind of break that mold of what I'd grown up understanding. And I didn't want to screw up my entire financial life because debt can be scary. But once I understood it, that was kind of the pivotal point. And then I was able to buy enough real estate. I hit my number I needed to by the end of that year and didn't go back. And so I've virtually been retired since then and just kept growing my portfolio and managing what I have.
So that year you did those properties, were they all bought just conventionally with conventional loans, and were they what asset class?
I did all of it, yeah. So I had a couple conventional loans, and then I had some seller finance stuff. I did a subject to. I did, some DSCR, just cheaper ones. Bought a couple of cheap ones in cash. I found homes for like 20 grand I could do in cash. I did some partnership stuff where I had other people bring in the capital and I did all the work, finding and stabilizing the asset, and I didn't put a penny into those deals. So I really was dabbling with all of it, which was kind of fun because at the same time, my buddy was starting, Brody Fawcett was starting the real estate investing school. And he was like, hey, come be a coach and come host the podcast. And I was like, awesome, this will be fun. And because he'd been seeing what I was doing quite a bit of stuff. But then once I started getting into the school, I was like, I hate teaching theory that I've never done. I want to teach what I've done. And so I was very interested in like doing it all. I was like, I'll do a short-term rental, I'll do a mobile home park, I'm going to do out of state, I'll do in-state, I'll do subject to. I just wanted to experience all of them so I could say firsthand how it works. And it just kind of gave me an extra motivation, because I at my heart, I think I'm a teacher. I just love teaching. Even though I got into sales, originally I was going to be a high school teacher. And it was fun to get back into that, learning stuff, to be able to share with the students and everything like that. And it was really fun, but I had to know it firsthand. So it gave me more incentive to do a bunch of random stuff.
Oh, I love it because from having me on your show, like I just can't stand when people don't do deals in the teaching. And there's unfortunately a bunch of people doing that. So it's kind of crazy. I love your take on that.
Yeah.
So there wasn't and tell me if I'm wrong then, I'm not catching okay, here's my exact design plan I'm going to do for the first year. You just got aggressive and get after it.
My plan was this. I needed X amount of money. I think it was like $8,000 a month to cover the bills. And so I was like, hey, I need $8,000 a month. I have this much capital. And then I did the math and said, I need this much cash on cash return. So if I deploy this much capital at an 18.5% cash on cash return, then I don't know if that was the exact number, but it's something like that. Then I'll hit this much cash flow so I can cover my bills and I won't have to go back to work. But, my kids are going to have food and shelter and I can pay for my car and my ex-wife's car and all this crap I had responsibility for. I was able to cover my bills and I knew exactly the cash on cash return I needed. And so what I did is I went out and said, okay, I don't care where the asset is. I don't care what the asset class is. If it'll give me the return, I'll deploy all my capital. And so, I bought condos and mobile homes and dirt lots and I bought in rural areas and I bought in blue states. And like, I got really creative doing very out of the box. Like everything they tell you not to do is kind of what I leaned into. And I knew I was inheriting a headache with a lot of this, but it was a remote headache that I can manage in my own time so I could be a full-time dad. So it worked for me.
Yeah, it's awesome. And what do you fast forward to today? Then what are you honed into an asset class or not necessarily?
I still kind of rest on what I know. Sometimes I like the single family homes. I've done a couple, like fourplexes, and I don't love them honestly as much. I really like single family. But I've got, I've got dirt. I love dirt. Dirt's one of my favorites. Just renting out the dirt to somebody, and I don't have any maintenance or insurance or like. There's no liability. If a tornado comes through and tears everything apart, my dirt's the same. You know what I mean? So I love those. I wish I had more of those. That's a hard one for me to scale and get the numbers to work. But a lot of my stuff's been one-off, but then once you end up 30, 40, 50 units, it works. But I would say I never got into like the big multifamily. I'm interested in it. I've studied it a lot. It's probably my next move, but I've still just been focusing on raising my kids and having fun, to be honest.
I love that you call it dirt. Most people would just say, yeah, I like buying land. Dirt is better. Like I love the whole dirt thing. So tell me about what you look for with that. I'm curious. You say you rent it out.
Yeah, so I stumbled across a couple lots that were on a probate sale on Zillow. And so it's super random. I had no idea what I was doing, but again, I was in this experimental mode. I was like, I got to figure stuff out. It was fun. So I bought these lots. I ended up clearing the lots, added utilities, and I just rented them out to RV or mobile home livers. And they come in and put it on there and they just pay a lot fee like they would at a mobile home park. But I'm not running a mobile home park. It's just an individual lot, but it works exactly the same way.
Got it. Neat, real neat. Okay, so do this. Let's picture you're at one of my events. I don't know. Let's picture 200 people in the audience. And with hindsight now that you have, what one or two things would you maybe say to them? Either avoid this or I wish I did this or both.
Yeah, so it really comes down to what your goals are, and that's what people need to get super clear on. Is like, what are you trying to accomplish? So, like, I would not recommend everybody do what I did. I bought a lot of lower class properties in rural areas. They're hard to manage. They're a total headache, you know. But for me, again, it worked because all I was trying to do is get the cash flow. For somebody who's going to be working a full-time job or their house flipping, if they got capital from other places coming in, I would definitely be like, well, go get better assets that are going to be easier to maintain. They're going to appreciate, get quality stuff. I couldn't hit my cash return numbers doing that. So for me, I wouldn't say I would do it different because it accomplished the goal I need to do, but it's not my focus now. Now I'm buying stuff that I lose money on because it's a great asset. I can get into it cheap. I did this subject too the other day and it's break even maybe, but I paid 10 grand and had this beautiful home.
Yeah.
That's going to go up in value. And I got in, at like 4% and I had a 3% interest rate on it. You know what I mean? Like when you can get good deals, but if I had done that at the beginning, I couldn't sustain it. I can't live off of appreciation someday. You know what I mean? So if you know what your goal is and your time frame and what your resources are, that's what I always tell you, those three things. What's your goal? What's your time frame on that goal? And what are your resources? If you triangulate those three things, that will determine your strategy that works best for you. And it's going to be different for everybody.
Okay, who wants to be the next apprentice? Pretty interesting, guys. We started this apprentice program back as a July 4th, 2024 promo. That's where it started. And it was so incredibly effective. We were just going to run it for the summer. It was so effective immediately. We kept it. It's in place now. And what is it? It allows you to get into the community, the Wicked Smart community, for less dollars than the QLS home study course sells for right now on our site. In fact, when you go to smartrealestatecoach.com/apprentice-pod, apprentice-pod, when you go there, you're going to see that as an apprentice, you're going to get over $13,000 worth of coaching, the possibility for you to touch base with us if you want to, 4 or 5 times a week, and it doesn't exist anywhere out there, frankly. That's why we did it. We did it for 2 reasons. One, no one is giving you the support out there. We keep hearing feedback, which is how this was born, that other educators are not giving support. They're just selling stuff. So it doesn't exist anywhere, and nowhere in the real estate education or coaching space. And we want to help you do one thing, deals. So we've wrapped the support mechanism around this. We've allowed you to get into a Slack community with the other associates who previously were protected in Slack, and now you get to jump in there and experience that for 12 weeks. You also get to come to the In the Trenches boot camp, which is private. It's a chance to hang out with the family team and one of the coaches for 2.25 days in our conference room, roll up your sleeves, get calls done, get deals done. If you come with leads, you leave with deals. Absolutely incredible. I could go on and on. Go to the website right now. Check out more information about the apprentice, and I'm going to give you the In the Trenches bootcamp site because you don't have to become an apprentice. It just happens to be free with apprentice and associate. So 2 links I'm going to give you, super important. smartrealestatecoach.com/ITTB-pod. That's going to give you some information about the bootcamp. If you want to buy a ticket to the bootcamp, it's more expensive, but you can. Just to come check us out. About 1 or 2 people every time we run it do just that. Or become an apprentice, and it's for free. smartrealestatecoach.com/apprentice-pod. No, it's a huge nugget. That's a huge thing for them to kind of refocus on or do a gut check on. I want to go back a little bit because I'm thinking now, and I should have asked this when you were on it, but I'm thinking there's a lot of Wicked Smart listeners. Life happens. I don't give a shit where you are, who you are. Life happens. So you had one major thing with the divorce, but you also took on other stuff after that, and you've got young kids. So most people would use that as an excuse. I think you'd agree. So how did you deal with that? Any nuggets there?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like I say, perspective is power. And it's all of the story you tell yourself. I had this written on my wall when I was in school, and it would say, life is 10% what happens to you and 90% what you do with it, and so some person could be raised by an alcoholic dad, or they could go through a divorce, or they could have a heart thing, lose a loved one, and it destroys them. It's like, oh, but the reason I fell apart is because of XYZ. Like, and it's fair. It's like, yeah, that stuff's hard. Like, I can see how that would make you fall apart. Somebody else could go through the exact same things. Like, yeah, that's why I got where I'm at, is because I leveraged that and it was hard and I had to step up my game, and for me, one interesting point with the divorce and stuff is it made me less careful. I was so scared. I was so concerned about protecting this perfect little paid off home that I had for me and my family, and making sure everything was good. And I didn't want to step out. I didn't want her to be mad at me or disappoint my wife, or like let my friends down and not be as rich as them. And like, I was living in this little mold that the world created for me. But then when my mold was shattered and it's like, oh, they're going to be a divorced single dad, never crossed my mind. I'm not even going to be living in that home that I paid off, that it was in an estate planning. It was all protect. I had done all these things to protect. I was like, it's all gone. Like, the only thing that matters now is my relationships. It's the people in my life, my kids, my family, my friends. They know I love them and I support them, and they love and support me. All the material stuff and security stuff was, I don't know what's going to happen. Life was like, at the time, it was like, I don't know. And it was like, all right, well, screw it. Like, what do they say? Like, the guy who has nothing to lose is dangerous, And I was like, fine, I'm going to put all the debt in the world on that house. I don't give a shit if I lose it or not, because like, whatever, I'm losing it anyway. Like even we're splitting the asset, but I'm not going to live in it. It's not going to be my child's home as I raise them in, like I thought. And so anyway, it made me a lot more willing to try stuff. And then it broke me out of my scared little safe mode. And I was like, let's go for it. And now that was huge. And I was still super conservative and safe of how I invested. I wasn't careless, but it was enough to just snap me out of my little safe bubble and say, just try, you'll be okay.
And do your kids, I think you said they're 6 and 8 now, do they hang out? I know it's young, but do they hang out around you being the entrepreneur? Because that's amazing exposure is why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's fun. They see me do it. They I work from home like this. They're at their mom's right now, but a lot of times they'll be upstairs when I'm on my podcast. They see me doing podcasts and see me doing stuff. I've taken them to homes where we go look at apartments, and we'll go knock on the door randomly and be like, hey, can we look at your house? You know what I mean? Like, I don't make them be the ones, my 8-year-old knocking on the door, and and they're like, what is happening? And I love making them do things to kind of make them feel comfortable. For at the store or at the bank, I make them go pay for things or deposit the money or withdraw the money themselves, and I stand 20 feet back and just watch them. And but yeah, I've taken them to do somewhat. A lot of my stuff's remote, so it's not like we're going and rehabbing homes together or anything like that, but they're exposed to it. Yeah,
the things you just said, very cool. I said it in the intro, sort of your thrill seeker label. We'll call it a label.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, are you still doing some stuff now in that realm? And what are you doing? Because you got little kids. I mean, what? Tell me about that now. Has that changed?
Yeah, I mean, my life's beautiful, man. Like, it's a life hack. I wouldn't tell everybody, like, you can't really plan on getting divorced, but I had a good divorce, and it was really hard the first 2 years, but we built a very amicable relationship. So half the time I get to do whatever I want. I'm a very free man, and the other half the time I get to be a loving, present father more than most anyway. And so I've got a really sick life. So I've got the time to raise the kids, but I've also got the time to play. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm always doing stuff. I just turned 40 last month, and I went to Iceland and went ice climbing a glacier and jumping in the freezing cold water and just doing a bunch of fun stuff, climbing waterfalls and hiking. And just recently, there's this cool thing called the Moab rope swing. Everybody go check it out. Shout out to Taylor. He runs an awesome program out there, and you can go do this 400-foot cliff that you jump off of. You free fall for 200 feet, and then a rope catches you and you just swing. So you're harnessed into a rope the whole time, but you're free falling for 200 feet. And I did that recently, and, skydiving in Hawaii, chasing dolphins, just anything I can do to have a good time. I love it.
Oh, that's awesome. So that didn't slow down. That's awesome. That's awesome.
No, it's
Um,
it's sped up a lot, with life, and then having the freedom of not having a 9 to 5 job or running a business. I have a lot of freedom of time, and so it's definitely my play has increased. And when I was grinding, when I was on the grind at the doors, knocking, and I was in this very sales it was like play is for weak people. They're like, play is, like you're so lazy, like we got to go make money. And I'm grateful I did, but I had changed my paradigm and I'm like, I love it. Like I prioritize it. Like it matters to me. I think play is important. And I also like to push myself too. I like to challenge myself. I've done like the half Ironman down here in St. George. I did a full distance triathlon with Iron Cowboy when he was doing 100 in a row. And like sometimes the challenges aren't fun, like jumping off cliffs. Sometimes they're brutal, like running a 35-mile trail run up in the mountains. So I do that stuff too. But all that matters. I think that all that is a priority to me. When I'm back in the day, none of it mattered. None of it got any time or focus. It was all just about grinding. And again, I can't put it down because that's what gave me the money and the finances to get where I'm at now. But I love my play.
really cool lifestyle lesson there for all the listeners, only because that's like our culture, right? In general.
Yep.
And not to mention the ones that are still stuck in the W-2. Actually, let me ask you to address them. How about the people stuck in W-2? They say they want out, but just the action doesn't move them. Something doesn't move them. What do you have some thoughts for them briefly?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's tricky. I think it does. If you can get clear on what you actually want, it helps a lot, and being willing to put the time in, like say, you need to be willing to make the sacrifices to get where you want. But it's a lot easier, I think, if you have time frames on things. If like, I'm going to do X, Y, Z, and this is how I'm going to do it, and this is how many years it takes. But if you're like, I'll get there someday, it's like, no. Like, are you doing this W-2 for 4 years so you can save enough money to do this entrepreneur thing for 5 years and then you're there? Or is it just, I don't know? You know what I mean? Like even when I was grinding, learning real estate, I spent about, because I say I gave myself a year, but it was a few months before that. But then I would say half that year was just studying. I mean, just constantly reading every book, every podcast. I'm at the gym. I got rid of, there was no TV. There was nothing. Like when I go on flights, it was like read books, listen podcasts. That was it. There was no playtime when I was doing that stuff. It was study 24/7. I didn't get to listen to music. I didn't get to watch movies. I didn't get to like do any of like the chill stuff when I had free time. It was figure this out. But I knew there was a time frame on it. I knew that there was an end to it. And so it's okay to do that. But some people get grinding for so long with no end in sight, with no game plan. They didn't have a cash return with this metric, with this capital. And they knew if they execute, they'll do it. They're just going. And then they're 35, 45, 55. And they're like, oh shit, where'd life go?
Yeah.
So have a game plan. If you don't have a game plan, learn enough to have a game plan, because you're like, well, I don't know what to do. It's like, well, then that's what you need to first figure out is figure that out. And then once you have a solid, like legitimate game plan, go execute,
Perfect. Love it. So don't forget, Joe, and then I want to ask you where you're headed with real estate before we wrap, but let these guys know how and where to reach you, anything whatsoever that you want to share.
Yeah, I mean, you can go to my website. It's just my name, Joseph F as in freedom, Jensen, josephfjensen.com. And it's just like a link tree to a bunch of stuff I'm doing. I wrote like a children's book. I've got a couple podcasts. I've got some short stories on real estate. I've got my social medias. You can just go check it out there and reach out to me. Like I said, I don't run a business. I don't run, I don't have an agenda. I don't need anything from anybody, but I love to share what I have. And I like to do stuff like this with you, Chris, and it's all just for fun for me. But yeah, I'd love to have anybody reach out.
Good. Appreciate that very much. So let me ask you that last question. And where are you headed with the real estate piece? You must have a plan because you just hammered these guys on being clear with the plan, right? So what's your plan with what's next?
Yeah, I mean, right now it's just keep building the portfolio. So it's kind of a combination of, I look at my existing portfolio and say, hey, how can I maximize this? One of my biggest next steps in finally getting into that phase of my plan is to eliminate more headache stuff, right? Because I said I inherited a lot of headache stuff to get me there. Now I'm like, okay, I've got a lot more cash flow than when I started. I don't need everything to live off of. So what can I pivot? What can I simplify in my portfolio and virtually in my life to do that? So how can I simplify and cut out the headaches? How can I maximize what I already have going on? And then how can I just keep adding to the portfolio? Just keep adding a few more properties every month or every year or whatever it is. Some months it's a couple, some years it's a couple, but just keep adding to the portfolio and keep building that cash flow. I want to keep my cash flow increasing. But then also, buying quality assets that will appreciate and make real wealth. I say, you don't get rich off cash flow, you get free off cash flow, but you can get rich off of equity increase, And so, I'm focusing more on those kind of assets. And then, who knows, maybe eventually I'll dive into the big multifamily stuff if I feel inclined to. I think once my kids get a little older, I'll probably have a lot more focus on doing bigger stuff. But man, 6 and 8, I've never been happier being a dad. They're so fun right now. It's just the coolest time. And I don't want to get engulfed in some big project that's going to eat up my soul. Even for 6 months or a year, it's just like, not right now. Like maybe when they're 13, 14, they don't want to hang out with me. But right now, like they like me and I like them. So I'll take advantage.
That's awesome. This will make me feel old, but my grandkids are that exact age. So
yeah, they're fun, huh? Yeah, it's a fun age, isn't it?
Yeah.
I started late into the game, so
it's all good. It's all good. Super, Joe. I could chat for a while. I want to have you back for an encore,
for sure,
sometime soon. And super appreciate the candor, the nuggets, the action items. So really appreciate you being on and hanging out with us for a half hour.
Absolutely, my pleasure, man.
Thanks, buddy. Okay, Wicked Smart listeners, that wraps up our time together with Mr. Joe Jensen. Reach out to him. Just an amazing individual. Just the energy alone, right? You can follow that forever. I would be remiss not to mention again our In the Trenches boot camp, because we've got, let's see, as of the airing of this episode, I think we've got one left. One where we bring you in our office here, 10 or 12 of you only, and it's free with every level in the company. And you get to hang out and rub elbows with me, my son, Nick, my son-in-law, Zach, and one of our coaches, where we're dialing the phone. We're structuring live deals in our conference room. You're elbow to elbow with us. It's a pretty cool experience, guys. I must say, and I'm a little biased, of course, but it's the best thing that we've done in over a decade with Smart Real Estate Coach. Just go to smartrealestatecoach.com/ITTB podcast to learn more about it. But again, it's free. You don't have to buy a ticket to it. As long as you're in the apprentice or the associate experience levels, you're golden. Until next week, let's take some action on those things. We got QLS Live coming up October 6th and 7th in Boston. Yep, it's right around the corner. And we've got that boot camp coming up in November. I would love to interact with you. Those two things right there would catapult you into 26 and potentially create a decade of income as we work together over the next 18 to 36 months. Make it a great week.
Hey guys, are you simply sick of juggling a dozen different software tools for your real estate business? I know I was, and I know I'm not a tech person, so it was frustrating. A subscription for this, you get a subscription for that, and they don't even work together out of the box. That's very frustrating, especially in the real estate world where your best time spent is going to be out in the field or on the phone with sellers. And now you're stuck hiring a tech guru just to make all that sync up. So let's ditch the chaos and let REI Black Book handle everything. Automate your lead follow-up, track every deal, analyze things quickly for you, make offers all in one platform. In fact, with the Wicked Smart platform, we now have access, if you're in the Wicked Smart community, to all the other associates' properties. Can you imagine that? So you're brand new in the business perhaps, and your seller looks on your website and sees 20, 30, 40 properties, instant credibility. So you're going to get everything on REI Black Book, from our custom workflows for lead generation all the way to closing. It has it covered. Try it today for just $1, guys. Visit smartrealestatecoach.com/REIBB-DD. smartrealestatecoach.com/REIB as in boy, B as in boy, hyphen, D as in dog, D as in dog.
All right. Thanks for tuning in to the Smart Real Estate Coach podcast. If you got value from today's episode, guys, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a future episode. It literally takes one nugget to access some of the things we're doing. And when you're talking the size rather of the paydays, it's an opportunity cost that you can't let go. So don't miss an episode. And for goodness sake, share it with someone who needs to hear it. If you're ready to find your best path for getting started on your real estate investing journey in general, head over to smartrealestatecoach.com/get started. We're going to help you take the guesswork out of your next steps. See you in the next episode.